Have you ever looked into a mirror, not just to fix your hair or check your face, but really looked? Not at your reflection, but into it, past the surface, deep into your own eyes. Most of us haven't, and if we did, many of us would probably look away. Because looking inward, truly inward, is terrifying. Let's begin there, at the mirror. It's symbolic. You know the kind of mirror I'm talking about. Not the one on your wall. I'm talking about the mirror within, the one that reflects your fears, your regrets, your beliefs, your history, your truths. The one that doesn't flatter you. The one that shows not what others see, but what you've kept hidden even from yourself. So why do we fear that mirror? Why do we turn away from self-discovery? Why do so many of us avoid the very journey that promises the most freedom? The truth is, we fear what we might find. See, introspection isn't a soft, gentle exercise. It's not always meditating on a hilltop or journaling with a cup of tea. Sometimes, it's like ripping off layers of your skin just to see what's underneath. Sometimes, it's confronting the ugliest parts of yourself. The anger you buried, the shame you swallowed, the parts of your past you desperately pretend didn't happen. Most people would rather stay busy, distracted, endlessly entertained, endlessly working, endlessly scrolling. Because silence, real silence, brings up voices we've muted for years. And once you hear them, you can't unhear them. But let's zoom out for a second. Where does this fear really begin? It often starts early. Think about childhood. We grow up being told what's good and what's bad. We learn quickly. Certain feelings are acceptable, others are not. Be happy, but not too loud. Be angry, but only when it's justified. Don't cry too much. Don't ask too many questions. Conform, performance, please. And in that process, many of us learn that some parts of ourselves are unwelcome. So what do? We hide them, not just from others, but from ourselves. And over time, we forget they were ever there. But they don't disappear. They live in the basement of our mind, knocking, quietly at first, then louder, until the noise becomes unbearable. And the only way to silence it is to look. But that's where the fear kicks in again. What if I'm not who I thought I was? What if I uncover something I can't fix? What if the truth changes everything? These aren't questions people ask out loud, but they live inside us. They shape our decisions. They shape who we pretend to be. And this pretending, it becomes our life. We construct entire identities not based on who we are, but on who we think we need to be. A version that's acceptable, that fits in, that gets applause, that avoids rejection. But inside, we're strangers to ourselves. Think about this. How often do you do things just because it's expected? How often do you silence a thought because it doesn't match the version of you that others expect to see? Every time we do that, we lose a little more connection with the self. That's the paradox. We crave authenticity, yet we fear it. We want to be seen, but we fear being known. We say we're searching for purpose, but avoid the very path that leads to it. And that path is knowing ourselves. Now here's the kicker. Real introspection isn't just about uncovering pain or trauma. That's part of it. But it's also about discovering beauty, potential, strength. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that were buried not because they were dark, but because they were powerful. See, the fear isn't just about facing your flaws, it's about facing your potential. It's scary to think, what if I'm capable of more? Because more requires change, responsibility, growth, shedding skin, losing people, starting over, walking away, saying no, saying yes. So we stay safe in the familiar, in the image, in the performance. But let me tell you something about that image. It's exhausting, because deep down, you know when you're not living as your true self. You feel it in your anxiety, in your frustration, in the moments of silence where your mind won't stop, in the sense that something's missing, even when everything looks good. That's the soul knocking, asking to be seen. Let's talk about a common reaction when people first start to turn inward. It's discomfort, real discomfort. Because the mind has defense mechanisms. The ego, our sense of self, has built walls. And when you start questioning the version of yourself that the ego has built, it fights back. You might get defensive, or suddenly tired. Or you'll find a million distractions that suddenly feel urgent. That's not weakness. It's biology. It's psychological resistance. Because the ego's job is to protect your identity, even if that identity is based on illusion. Here's a metaphor. Imagine your identity as a house you've built over years. Every room, every wall, every piece of furniture is a belief about who you are. Some of those beliefs were placed there by others. Some by pain, some by love, some by survival. Now, introspection is like walking into that house with a flashlight and realizing not everything belongs here. Some of it's outdated. Some of it's toxic. Some of it was never yours to begin with. Now imagine trying to renovate that house while still living in it. That's self-discovery. It's messy. It's loud. It's emotional. But it's necessary. Because until you renovate that house, until you own every room of it, you're living in someone else's blueprint. Let's talk for a moment about silence. Because silence is the gateway to self. Most people avoid silence like it's a disease. We fill every gap with music, podcasts, conversations, noise. But silence is where truth lives. Sit in silence for long enough, and things begin to surface. Regrets, memories, desires, pain, love. That's why many people say meditation is hard, not because of the posture, but because of what shows up when the noise stops. But here's the thing. What shows up in the silence is who you are. And until you make peace with that version of you, the unfiltered, raw, real you, you'll always feel like something's missing. Because what's missing isn't out there, it's in here. So many of us are searching for answers in the world, but the questions we're asking are internal. Why am I unhappy? Why do I feel stuck? Why do I sabotage myself? Those answers don't come from books. They don't come from social media. They come from sitting with yourself, being honest, and doing the hard work of self-inquiry. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Let that sink in. Everything you don't face within yourself continues to run your life from the shadows. That fear you never addressed? It controls your choices. That belief you never questioned? It shapes your relationships. That pain you never healed? It shows up as anger, anxiety, withdrawal. Self-awareness isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. And the scariest part? No one can do it for you. No therapist, no coach, no guru can walk into your mirror and make you look. They can guide. They can support. But only you can face the reflection. Now, here's the good news. Fear isn't the end of the story. Fear is the beginning. Because fear is a signal. It's a flashlight. It says, something here matters. It says, there's something worth looking at. The goal isn't to eliminate fear. The goal is to walk with it, to understand it, to ask, what are you trying to protect me from? And then listen. Often, fear is trying to protect a younger version of you, a version that was hurt, rejected, shamed. That part of you doesn't need to be banished. It needs to be understood, loved, integrated. That's real healing. And the more you do this, slowly, gently, the less the mirror scares you. The more it becomes a place of power instead of pain. Because in the end, the mirror isn't your enemy. It's your freedom. Let's pick up from where we left off, from the fear of the mirror. Now, let's talk about what we put between us and that mirror. The masks. Because if we fear the truth, we don't just run from it. We cover it. We create versions of ourselves, identities, characters, masks that help us survive, and sometimes thrive, at least on the outside. We wear these masks in different roles: the strong one, the funny one, the successful one, the always okay one. Some of us even wear the deep or woke mask, tricking ourselves into thinking we've done the inner work just because we can talk about it. But masks are heavy. They cost energy, because behind every mask is a person trying to hold it in place, trying not to let it slip, trying not to be seen. Ask yourself, how many versions of yourself are you managing right now? One at work, one with friends, one online, one with family. And then there's you, the quiet you, the you that only shows up in moments of solitude, the you that doesn't always have the answers, the you that sometimes feels like a fraud because the outside doesn't match the inside. That's the real you. And that's the version most of us are afraid to be seen as. Why? Because being real means being vulnerable. And vulnerability feels like exposure, like danger. But here's the twist. It's not dangerous to be real. What's dangerous is the belief that we're only lovable when we're not. This belief often forms early in life. Let's go back for a second. Back to the beginning. Children don't wear masks. Not at first. They cry when they're sad, laugh when they're joyful, shout when they're angry. They live fully and unapologetically. But then something happens. Maybe they express something real and get shamed for it. Maybe they're told, directly or indirectly, that parts of them are too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too needy. Maybe they learn that love is conditional, based on behavior, success, or silence. And slowly, they start to suppress, to contort, to adapt. They learn how to be liked instead of how to be whole. They grow up to become adults who've built identities around what was accepted and suppressed what was true. This is where the fear of introspection gets even deeper. Because when we turn inward, we don't just face ourselves, we face the systems and experiences that taught us not to. We have to confront parents, schools, religions, cultures, past relationships, not necessarily the people themselves, but the imprints they left on us. That's not easy, because we don't want to believe that people we loved, or depended on, might have hurt us, even if unintentionally. But healing isn't about blame. It's about responsibility. The responsibility to look, to feel, to choose a new path. It's about saying, maybe I didn't choose what happened to me, but I do choose what I do with it now. And that's the beginning of transformation. Now, let's get practical for a moment. How do we start uncovering these masks? How do we actually meet ourselves? It starts with honesty, radical honesty. Not the kind where you journal cute affirmations. The kind where you sit with a question and let the answer hurt a little. Try asking yourself, who am I when no one's watching? What parts of me do I hide, and why? What am I afraid people will see if I stop performing? What belief about myself am I most afraid is true? Let these questions sit. Don't rush to answer. Let them stir discomfort, because discomfort is where truth lives. And once you start to face those truths, another layer begins to fall away. Judgment. See, most people avoid introspection not just because of fear, but because of shame. They believe they'll discover something that makes them unworthy. But what actually happens over time is the opposite. You begin to see your humanity. You begin to see how your behaviors made sense, given your pain. You begin to forgive yourself, not to excuse your actions, but to understand them. You begin to realize, I am not broken. I've been protecting myself. And that realization is powerful, because once you stop fighting yourself, you can start loving yourself. Now, let's be clear. This isn't a quick process. There's no shortcut to self-awareness. There's no hack for emotional depth. It takes time, and it takes feeling things you've spent years avoiding. Sometimes it means crying unexpectedly. Sometimes it means facing memories you thought you forgot. Sometimes it means realizing you don't know who you are, because you've been so many things for so many people. That realization, it's not a crisis, it's a beginning. And beginnings are sacred, because when you strip away the noise, the roles, the conditioning, you begin to rebuild. Not the mask, but the self. You begin to ask new questions. What actually matters to me? What do I need, not what was I taught to need? What does joy feel like when it's not performative? What kind of life would I create if I wasn't afraid? These questions are the foundation of a new kind of freedom. Because here's the thing. Once you begin to know yourself, you can no longer be manipulated by people or systems that rely on your disconnection. You begin to say no without guilt. You begin to choose relationships that feed your soul. You begin to work in ways that align with your purpose, not your fear. You begin to live from the inside out. That's what scares the world. That's why most of society encourages distraction, performance, consumption, because a person who knows themselves, truly knows themselves, is powerful. They don't need to be sold a lifestyle. They're already living one. Let's talk about one more thing in this part. The role of the body in self-awareness. Most people think introspection is all mental, but the body remembers what the mind forgets. Your body holds your stories. Trauma, joy, grief, intuition, they all live in the body. That tightness in your chest when you're around someone? That pit in your stomach when you're about to speak your truth? That sensation you can't explain when you're not in alignment? That's the mirror, too. Your body is a mirror, and often it's more honest than your thoughts. Learning to connect with your body, to feel it, listen to it, trust it, is a vital part of self-discovery. Because sometimes the truth isn't in your mind, it's in your muscles, your breath, your silence. You can't think your way into wholeness. You have to feel your way there. And yes, that means healing will feel like grief sometimes, because you're not just discovering who you are. You're mourning who you pretended to be. You're letting go of versions of yourself that got you through, but no longer serve you. And that's brave. You're standing in front of the mirror, finally, and saying, I want to see it all, even if it hurts, even if it breaks me, because I know what's on the other side is real. That is the path. It's not pretty, it's not linear, but it's honest. And honesty is the birthplace of self-love. So the next time you feel that fear rising, that discomfort, that resistance, don't run. Pause, feel it, ask it. What are you trying to protect? And then thank it, because even your fear is part of you. And every part of you deserves to be seen, even the ones still learning how. So now we've arrived at the final stretch. You've stood in front of the mirror. You've felt the fear, the shame, the rawness. You've pulled back the masks, questioned your beliefs, challenged the voice in your head that told you you had to be someone else to be accepted. And maybe now you're wondering, what's next? What happens after the truth is no longer something we avoid, but something we welcome? This is where we begin the work of integration. Integration is the bridge between introspection and embodiment. It's the process of turning insight into action. It's where we stop being tourists in our inner world and start becoming residents, where we no longer just talk about authenticity, but live it, breathe it, build from it. But let's be real. This part can be even harder than the discovery, because knowing who you are is one thing. Living as that person, that's where the world pushes back. See, society is built around performance, around image, around fitting in. When you start living unmasked, some people won't recognize you anymore. They'll ask, "You've changed. Why are you so distant? Why don't you come out like you used to? Why are you so serious these days?" And that's because when you stop playing the part others have gotten used to, you disrupt the script. But that's not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for keeping others comfortable by remaining small. Let me say that again. You are not responsible for keeping others comfortable by remaining small. This part of the journey requires courage. Not the kind of courage that shouts, the quiet kind, the kind that makes hard choices, the kind that walks away when necessary, the kind that sets boundaries, not to punish, but to protect. You'll have moments of doubt, moments where the old mask feels tempting, familiar, safe. But remember this, the mask may have protected you once, but now it's suffocating you. Freedom isn't found in pretending. It's found in presence, and presence requires wholeness. Here's something most people don't tell you about self-awareness. It's lonely sometimes, not because people leave you, but because you leave the roles you used to play, and that can feel like starting over. But what you gain is priceless. You begin to feel peace that isn't based on external validation. You begin to experience relationships that are rooted in truth, not performance. You begin to trust yourself, not because you're perfect, but because you've made peace with your imperfections. This is where healing shifts from theory to reality, and it starts showing up in quiet, powerful ways. Like the moment you choose rest instead of proving your worth through productivity. Like the moment you speak a truth you used to bury. Like the moment you forgive someone, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve freedom. Like the moment you look in the mirror, not to criticize or compare, but to see yourself, fully, softly, with compassion. Let's talk about compassion for a moment, because self-knowledge without compassion becomes cruelty. It's easy to turn self-awareness into self-judgment, to weaponize your insights against yourself. But the goal of the mirror isn't to punish, it's to reflect. And reflection, when met with love, becomes transformation. You are not here to be flawless. You are here to be real. You are allowed to stumble, to regress, to forget. What matters is that you return. Return to your truth. Return to your values. Return to the self beneath the noise. Let's return to something we said earlier. Fear is a signal. It's not the enemy. At this point, fear may still show up. When you try something new, when you share something vulnerable, when you let go of a person or place that no longer fits. But now, you know how to meet it. You know to pause, to listen, to ask, what are you trying to protect? And then to thank it. That shift, from reacting to relating, is what changes everything. Now, instead of fearing fear, you understand it. And once you understand something, it loses its power over you. That's what it means to be free. Not fearless, but intimate with fear. Not perfect, but present. Not constantly happy, but deeply alive. Let me ask you something. What would your life look like if you stopped running? Not from responsibilities or stress, but from yourself? What would it look like if you trusted your intuition again? If you let your voice be heard, not just by others, but by you, what would your relationships feel like if you stopped hiding? If you let people love the version of you that isn't always on, or pleasing, or impressive? That life, that depth, is available. But it starts with a decision to return to the mirror, to look at yourself, not with judgment, but with curiosity, to choose intimacy over image, truth over comfort, wholeness over perfection. Now, here's the final truth I want to leave you with. There is no final version of you. There's no complete self to discover. Because self-awareness isn't a destination. It's a practice. You will always be unfolding, always changing, always becoming. And that's beautiful. Because every layer you uncover, every truth you accept, every part of you that you welcome back into your heart, makes you more human, more real, more whole, more you. And the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more whole people. People who've done the inner work. People who are unafraid of their own reflection. People who know who they are and love what they find. So the next time you see a mirror, pause. Look beyond the surface. Ask not, do I look good? Ask, do I see myself? And then, slowly, gently, let the answer guide you. Because your reflection is not something to fear. It's the home you've been waiting to return to.